Sound weird to you guys too?
Not anymore. We hear you.
You hear me now? All right, let's go ahead and slow that all the way down. I think I just glitched for a second, but I'm back. Happy Monday, my wonderful ladies.
Happy Wednesday. That picture.
Happy Juneteenth, everybody.
Juneteenth. Happy Juneteenth.
Was that Rissa or Nazi that sent that Venmo request for Juneteenth?
My daughter sent all her friends a request for Venmo. She said, it's Juneteenth. Venmo me. I taught her that her pronouns are fuck you, pay me.
Yep.
Speaking of paying me, shall we get into it today? All right, ladies, let's first of all, happy Juneteenth, everybody. Thank you guys for being here on this national holiday where you guys could have been doing anything at the barbecue, at the kickback, at the party, even though most of those happened this past weekend. I didn't get into any fun parties this weekend, but Jade, you look like you were having a whole ball this weekend.
Girl, I was working. Work always looks like a ball, but work is still always work. Don't get it twisted.
Are you recovered? Are we recovered?
I am actually recovered. Yeah, it was a great weekend. I hosted, there's this huge fashion show that happens here in Dallas, really in Frisco, Texas. So I hosted that again this year. And then this was my first year hosting for the Dallas Cowboys. They had a Juneteenth celebration as well. So that was really, really, really great. So I plan on being back there next year as well. But, I'm in Texas, so Juneteenth is actually a really big deal.
Right.
And it has always been. What's interesting is like the people that I've met that are on other, in other parts of the country, they've never gotten it. They're like, I don't understand. What are y'all celebrating? It's confusing to them. Like, why would you guys celebrate being late receiving the notification, right? But what do they say? Until all of us are free, none of us are free. So it's always been a really big deal here in
right.
where I am in Texas. So yeah.
Yeah.
And what about your event with the Dallas Cowboys? We saw that. As Niner fan, I just really want you to know I noticed that, and it was a little off-putting. I didn't really love it, but I thought, she's getting paid, and I was like,
well, we don't really trust your judgment as a Niner fan either.
I'm sorry, I couldn't make a bad connection.
Who do you root for, Nasima?
Nobody.
Raiders.
No, Raiders are gone. I'm from Oakland. Okay,
Raiders.
I'm from Oakland. I root for everything Oakland.
Okay.
When the Raiders and the Niners, they call that the Bay Area Super Bowl. It's like a big deal. The rivalry it runs deep, and I've always been a Niner fan.
So I got to tell y'all a story real quick before we start. I actually years ago I used to date a Cowboy. This is years ago. So I went to when they played the Oakland Raiders. Look, I ain't no punk, but I ain't never been so nervous in my life. I was like, I wore a white t-shirt. I was super neutral. I wasn't cheering. Oakland, like the Raiders fans back then somebody told me there was actually a jail at the stadium. I was like,
yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to play with these people today. Like, I'm going to silently be cheering for the Cowboys. I just want to make it back home.
What do you mean? No jail at every stadium? Like, what?
No. And the fact that you said that like that's normal. No, ma'am.
No, I'm actually kind of like in shock a little bit. A jail at the stadium is crazy.
It's efficient. The area we're efficient.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
That prison. We might need to be talking about prison reform on here real soon. Well, this is good. Well, let's get into it, guys, because I am actually. This topic was suggested to me literally just yesterday. So I'm at my godparents' house, and every once in a while when I come to Vegas to visit, and I'm in Vegas right now, I go to my godparents' house and I cook, and I like to cook and leave a lot of food there for the week for them. And I was over there cooking last night, and they also run a church here in Las Vegas. Shout out to LTC 365, Life Transformation Church 365 in Henderson. But our apostle was also at the house. And as I'm cooking, you know how cooking is like a social activity too, when you're like with people in the kitchen, right? So we're talking and cooking and talking and cooking. And I asked him, I said, hey, you tune into the show almost every week. What do you think we should talk about next? I said, I'm working on some of our topics for tomorrow. And he goes, you all are so knowledgeable. He goes, I feel like, let's bring it back to the basics. Could you talk about what you would recommend for somebody who's new in business? He said, I always it was always drilled into my head that a business plan is something that we need. And I said, wow, that's actually really on time, because this is a very recent conversation I've had with some folks that I work with about business planning, output, all that kind of stuff. So theme for today is I'm brand new in business. What do I do first? So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to kick it off. And I think that he had a really good point about business plans. So I want to talk about business plans and then we'll take it from there. But I can tell you right now, when we created Wire, I did not have a business plan. I didn't. I did not have a business plan. It was actually super organic. I didn't know what it was going to become. I had no clue. If you would have asked me 3.5 years ago if this is what I would be doing today, I'd be like, no, you're absolutely tripping. So we had to figure it out. But then as we started to, create a result, we worked a little bit backwards, put pen to paper. And part of that is because, again, it was super organic. We had to just follow the wave, right? We had to ride that wave and follow that. But the other part is I also didn't really know what I was fully getting into. And so sorry about that. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. I want to talk about, taking an idea, putting it on paper, and having a full, concept thought out from beginning to end on how I'm going to execute. So I think this is applicable for entrepreneurs, independent contractors. So a lot of people that are watching the show right now, Latoya in the comments, she is a real estate agent, right? And she's making a pivot in her business, going to a brand new, firm, a brand new brokerage, trying to establish herself, establish her brand. And although she's not, she's with a brokerage, she's responsible for her own brand. So I want to talk about business planning today and what putting pen to paper looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up and chime back in here in a few minutes.
Can I just say one thing? I was listening to a podcast the other day and they talked about like creating a business plan. And mind you, I am not the spokesperson for small businesses, but I heard that a lot of people waste time creating a business plan instead of actually like making sure they have a profitable business. And a business plan is only necessary if you think that you want a large sum of outside funding. So just put that out there as a perspective as we get started about talking about business plans, because I feel like maybe they might not be as necessary as people think. However, I think what you're talking about is creating a strategic plan around what you want your business to look like, which can pivot. But like the old school, like business plan, like writing out like the 7-page paper of what your business is going to look like with profits, revenue, all that stuff may not necessarily be like really applicable for most businesses or necessary.
Which I'm glad you brought up, because I was going to ask the question, like, do people still do business plans? Because I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Patty.
Well, a business plan, you're absolutely right. I think you hit the nail on the head, Nasima, is that when you're talking about a comprehensive business plan that has a market analysis, you're talking about how well you've researched your competitors, things of that nature, is done for raising capital, right? Because if you're giving a presentation to a group of investors and you're trying to raise capital and you're building from the ground up, that's a different story. And I think really the root of the question from our listener that you brought to the table today, Kalani, is really more so about this idea of full embodiment. In general, you've heard that whenever you have an idea and if you start writing that idea down, the likelihood of it coming to fruition is increased, tenfold. So you have this higher probability of accomplishing something when you write it down. But it's not just the act of writing it down. It's because how many times in the last week, since last week's show to now, have you sat down and been completely undistracted for 5 full minutes just having a thought, a prayer, a thought, an idea? You haven't. So the idea, I had to time myself for my time on the prayer rug, because I was like, wow, this is something I would avoid, or I would be like, I don't have time for, but that only took 5 to 7 minutes. And only in that 5 to 7 minutes am I completely undistracted, right? So if you're thinking about, like, for example, in Latoya's situation where she's a real estate agent establishing herself in a brand new brokerage, this isn't about you writing a comprehensive business plan, right? It's about taking a pen and a piece of paper and really feeling the embodiment of the realization of your goals. and putting down practical steps that you want to get there. For example, I wanted to become a $100 million producer. I would go door to door to find out how I could do it. I would try to ask people, they wouldn't give me the information. Then it finally dawned on me. I had to divide that by my average loan amount and figure out how many loans I had to close. And then to get to that, I had to figure out how many calls I had to make and how many applications needed to come in. And when those numbers became clear to me, the flow of the business increased very much so. I think we underestimate the energetic power of this embodiment. So when they say things like fake it to make it, or when people tell you that you have to act as if, those are common terms in the business world.
Mhm.
The embodiment of that is the undistracted dedication to the pen and the pad, where you are taking the ideas out of your mind, just like God in creation. You're taking these ideas and you're bringing them on a piece of paper. You're embodying the feeling of creating it, and then you're going to go put more action behind it. It becomes a lot more real. So a one pager is simply what you need if you're running a small business. And I'll end on this note for my commentary. I work with, I have a black belt in Taekwondo. My Taekwondo master is a woman. She is an 8th degree black belt and she runs one studio. She is probably 10 times wealthier than her counterparts that have multiple studios. And she has a great amount of wealth, owns lots of multi-million-dollar real estate, lives very low key, always looks like a bum and doesn't care, right? Her attitude, she taught me something that was really, really valuable. And I know her numbers because I've worked on her home loans before. So I see the cash flow and I understand she makes more money than a dentist, right? So what happens is she told me, she gave me something really important for the plan that goes on paper and it can fit on a small piece of sticky note. You only need 1% of your local market. So if you did a little Google search and you figured out, hey, I'm looking at attracting 1% of my local market, do the math on that and see what happens. You want the entire world to recognize you when you only need 1% of your local market. So with a one-page document, you could take your ideas and spend 5 to 7 undistracted minutes and turn that into 15 and 20 and feel the embodiment of the plan. And therefore you would be absolutely shocked to see what can come from that.
Okay, so
Love it.
you gave us a lot, and we got to actually dissect this a little bit, right? Because you made a really good point, and I want to make sure we don't gloss over that, is that your business is not for everybody, right? So the 1% of people that you are looking to get in front of, I think that if you were looking to create a business plan, that needs to be a part of it. Like, who is your ideal client avatar? Who are we going after? Who do we speak to? So I 100% agree in the sense that you don't necessarily need a crazy robust business plan unless you need to tell a story. Business plans are good for storytelling, right? So if I need to articulate who I am, what the vision is, my experience in doing this, and then my vision, and then not only the vision, but how I plan to implement and execute on said vision, right? That's what we're looking to know. Otherwise, a one pager is actually what we use in what I have this booklet, but then I also have a one pager that we teach and we use in our real estate for exactly what you said, which is identifying your outputs need to be those revenue generating tasks, kind of carrying this on from last week's conversation, right? And reverse engineering. Okay, if I want to sell $100 million in home loans this year and I'm Patty Goodspeed, I know I need to have X amount of conversations. I need to touch X amount of people. That means I am basically averaging my workout over the entire year so I can accomplish the things that I need to accomplish, right? Business is math. And I preach on this all of the time. And so the one pager, 10 out of 10, highly recommend. But what I want to, wanted to just, I guess, confirm that I agree in this setting. What I wanted to touch on though, Patty, is in someone that's as accomplished as you are, if for whatever reason, and I'm not saying that this is a conversation, but say you wanted to pick up your branch from CCM and go to another company, right? Obviously, like you have a whole branch and operation, right? You've got a company within this company that would essentially, that is supported by you and your deal flow, right? And there's a lot of value to that. So when you are taking yourself and having conversations about what, I don't know what the correct term is, other firms essentially could offer you, that is heavily contingent upon your business plan, is it not?
No. not in my setting. So for example, if I was shopping for a bank and I wanted them to offer me something, the thing is that no, my business plan doesn't matter. What matters in that conversation is more so my track record.
Okay, so if you were to go, and I'm glad I'm asking for clarification. So if you were to go to XYZ Bank, right? Say you were coming to Black Sea Capital, and you are asking for, they were saying, "Hey, come do business over here with us, right? We want you to do that." And you're saying, based on my track record, I'm slated to do 200 million next year. That's all they need to know, or do they dive into the how you intend to support this operation?
Well, the conversation starts with add another zero and call me back, Bob. You know, and but no, okay. So I mean, here's what I think you're getting at. So I think that when I was let's just imagine that you are young in what you're doing, and in all businesses, for example, if you have a small business, you have the option to sell to a bigger business, right? So same concept. So it doesn't matter if you're in my business or not. If you are a small organization, someone big will recognize you if you do enough numbers, and they're going to want to absorb your business and make it worth your while. And that's when you start talking seven figures, right? So in order to get to that point, what helped me was that plan, the plan that I wrote out religiously. And I want you guys to know I was sitting in a 1,200 square foot home with no furniture on the floor, with just about nothing, almost working out of my closet when I was having that conversation with myself about becoming a $100 million producer. And it didn't that idea was not born until I was in Beverly Hills. I went to a panel where people were $100 million producers. Prior to that, that number didn't even exist in my brain. So
Yep,
it was,
you had to know it was possible. Yeah.
exactly. I had to know it was possible. So then I came back and was, started that. So basically it was that one pager. Now, because when I would talk to people that were further along than me, people that had the power to write those checks, people that had the power to give me those offers, and I had a clear plan, that made me stand out. Right? Not a comprehensive business plan. I wasn't raising capital, but that made me stand out. It made me stand out because I knew not only what I wanted, but I knew what I had to do to get there. And I embodied that. There was in that era, you could not talk to me and hear anything coming out of my mouth other than $100 million. I had embodied that, and I had written it down with absolutely having no pennies to rub together. There were 5 main things that I wrote down for myself therapeutically, and within 5 years, every single one of those things came to fruition. So when I read the notes about the business plan, I love that Nasima started it off talking about how the comprehensive business plan is for the notion of raising capital. But for us, when you have a small business, or you're an independent contractor, or you're an independent person in real estate who you want to go out and make money, it's really about a task-oriented thing, and taking that large end game and turning it into small, boring steps that happen every day. And if you're the type of individual that can really take the time to be undistracted and embody that plan and feel as if it's coming to fruition, and then put the action behind it, and you can remain excited throughout the boring, mundane, day-to-day tasks of it, you're going to be a winner. You're going to be a big winner. And those conversations are going to come across very clear. There's a big difference between me sitting across from Jade, looking her dead in the eyes and telling her I'm going to do something, versus someone sending her a text message right from another location who's been talking bullshit forever and they don't never follow through with it. Right. So it's that follow through. There's a much different energy that gets conveyed when someone speaks and they're actually embodying what they're talking about, because they've either lived it or you just know that they're going to do it. If you surveyed anyone that knows me, no one's going to be surprised, because any conversation they've ever had with me over the last 25 years, they would have known this is the energy that I brought to the table. And it happens because I believe in what I'm writing down, and then I take action behind it. So that's how those negotiations work for me, Kelani.
So let me ask a question really fast. I want to scale it all the way back. And there's also a question I want to address that's in the chat. The first question is, when you say things like 1% of your local market, can you be clear on what your local market looks like? Because now we live in a space of social media, right? So
say that. Yeah.
Is local market your neighborhood? Is local market your state? Is local market the amount of followers you have on social media? Because I want to make sure that when people watch this back, or those that are listening right now, they kind of grasp what that target kind of looks like. And then there's another question I want to get to in the chat.
I mean, if you're Nasima and you're selling your financial services, your financial planning services, or what your university or your offerings are, right? If you're doing that, your local market, you need 1% of your local market. Now go back and look to see, does 1% of your following engage with you? Right? That would solve for that problem. Now, if you're a real estate agent, social media is not where you're getting your information. Social media is where you are communicating and puffing your wings for your peers, and your peers are not paying your bills. So it doesn't mean you don't get visibility, but if you're a real estate agent, 1% of your local market. So if you take the 5 zip codes that you serve and you take 1% of that, I guarantee if you do the math, that's enough income to last you for a couple of years. 1% of your local market. In her case, she owned a Taekwondo studio. She only needed 1% of the local market, or way less. 1% is more than her building could hold. But if the focus is 1%, because remember, if I say I'm going to do 100 million or I'm going to lose 100 pounds, that is a much larger goal and it feels overwhelming and I'm dying in that pressure, right? So when it's something that's smaller and more tangible, so 1% of the local market means something different for every business type. I think social media can be used. If you're talking social media, my thought would be, how do you get 1% of your following to engage with you?
Got you. Okay, that was great. And then FD Briscoe III for president, that what a name, says, are vision and mission statements needed for businesses like we were taught back in the day? So do you need a vision and a mission statement? Which, I mean, in a sense, you sitting on the floor in your 1,200 square foot house, that's what you wrote. You wrote your mission, you wrote out your vision, you wrote out your mission statement. I mean, do you have to call it that? But you got to know where you're going, right? So
yeah. Can I answer that one?
Call for anything. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And even in recent conversations, Jade, you and I were on the phone the other day and we're like, okay, we need to even talk through and hash out who we're, for the exact purpose of what Patty just said, who are we here to serve, right? That identifying that 1% of your market or of that ideal client avatar for yourself and figuring out where are those people, right? So one of the things about business for me that is super, super important is that, I just talked about this today, is that people do business with people that they like, know, and trust, right? We've heard that a million times. So if you don't even know who you are and what your identity is in the marketplace and what you represent, how can you effectively communicate a brand that people can begin to interact with, begin to like, know, and eventually trust if you don't know who you are? Another thing that I love about mission statements and core values is that it creates a whole other like grading scale rubric for you, because when you get into business and if you are an entrepreneur, man, some are opportunities, right? Like some things will distract you. You know, some people tend to go wide instead of deep on their given thing. And I am such a proponent of going deep because I really feel like there are distractions that exist. Not everything that's good is God either. And so do you have a set of core values, a mission statement to say, okay, before I engage with this person, with this relationship, with this opportunity, this financing, this money, is this in alignment with what my company is here for and what it's intended to do? And when you have that set of values, right, that mission statement, you have that, it takes all of the pressure off of me. If someone comes up to me and says, Kaylani, I will give you $1 million right now for X, Y, and Z, $1 million, we're going to have to talk about it, but I'm going to have to evaluate, right? Is this good money? Is this a good opportunity? Is this going to push the business and propel the business forward to where it's intended to go? I want to really quickly, very fast, and I'm going to pass this to Nasima because I feel like, Nasima, I just feel your thoughts coming through the screen. But I really, when I was a broker at CBRE, we had something called a sales manager. In each local office, there is a managing director, and then there is a sales manager. And I remember being a new broker and walking in and having a meeting with my sales manager for the first time. And she was like, okay, where's your business plan? And I was like, oh, okay. I know what I'm here to do. I know what my product type is. I know my market. How am I going to create some waves in this market? And it really came down to doing the activity that Patty just said. Now, when you are an independent contractor, I don't want to devalue the idea that a business plan isn't super, it tells a story, but I also want to articulate the fact that it is one that most independent contractors or people that are responsible for production in any sense of the word, it's an impressive thing to have, and I'm gonna tell you why. So I have another wire member. Her name is Nikki, and we love Nikki, and she's a commercial underwriter. And I'm gonna tell you the story. We were doing some coaching. We were sitting down. We were talking, and she wanted to transition into a producer role. She's always been in a support role in commercial real estate. She wanted to become a producer, and I remember talking to her through this, and I'm saying, okay, well, they're going to ask you what your business plan is. You want to become a producer. Well, how are you going to bring in deals? Right. And so we sat down and we did this activity where we reverse engineered the math. We kind of put some metrics, some pen to paper, but she beautifully did these activities where she created her mission statement. She figured out what her identity was in all of this. And when she sat down with these firms to talk about potentially being a producer, every single one of them offered her a position because she was able to walk in and say, hi, this is who I am. This is my vision. This is what I want to do. This is the value I bring to the table. This is my brand. Can your company support me? And that turned the conversation from hey, you need us, or you need me more than I need you. And that only came from putting pen to paper. So I just wanted to say that.
I love that. I love that. And I think getting very clear on those concepts of and being able to present that is beautiful. But I think she's coming from a place where she's already in a particular role. But I want to kind of bring it all the way back to those people, especially because nowadays with all the internet, people are pushing this entrepreneurship. And number one, not everybody needs or wants or desires to be an entrepreneur, but I think it's oversold. But for people who do want to just even validate if starting their own business is something for them, instead of focusing on like these things like creating a website, like all of these things that people think that creating an LLC, like that's what they'll say. Like, do you even have something that somebody is going to pay you for?
Right.
Like, can we start there? And when you talk about going deep, Kaylani, I'm thinking about like, okay, first of all, figure out what the thing that you want to do is, okay? Do that thing, but also validate that there is even demand for that thing by not just asking people if they will pay you for it, but actually getting the money from people, making sure that this is something that they want. If it's like being a contractor in a business or in real estate, like landing that first sale, whatever it is, validate that first, then you can really articulate what your mission and vision is because you're actually in the work instead of creating like a business from this imaginary place. But I don't think like, and then you drill into that and then you figure out what you like and what you don't like. But a lot of people are so focused on creating business structures and business plans that they don't actually drill into the work. And once they drill into the work, they're like, I don't even know if I want to do this, or this is not something that's even gonna be able to generate revenue for me. And so instead of wasting all that time doing that, get right into the deep work of actually doing the thing, figuring out what works for you or what doesn't work, if you're even cut out for this, before you even go down this whole path. And I think like that's like the biggest thing I can tell people, the people starting out, like actually validate that you can actually generate revenue from this. At the end of the day, you have to be producing something that is going to generate value in the long run. So like start there.
Yeah, you just like said so much, because I feel like I've met so many people that are like, oh my gosh, I have this idea. I want to do this business. I'm going to start this business. And we're like, okay,
Start
great. Start it. It's been an idea. You've been working on that business plan for 5 years. Y'all ever watch Insecure? Y'all know Lawrence when he was on the couch working on whoop whoop, right? That's what that's giving very much.
Yes.
Yeah. So proof of concept. You can have the best product, you can have the best idea, and if nobody knows that it exists, it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I think even scaling it back from that because I mean, look, you ain't even getting to the branding part. I think the motive behind why you're even starting a business is a big thing. Like you have to research, why am I doing this? Did you see somebody else do it? Number one, and you think, oh, okay, they did it, so I can do it. Two, a lot of people want to go into entrepreneurship because they don't necessarily want to answer to anybody else. And they have this misconception that you're able to make your own schedule. No, when you become an entrepreneur, you will be working 3 times more hours than you were at a 9 to 5. Because
And you are your own boss.
Yes, you are your own boss. You're answering to yourself, which is if you're already not an accountable person, you can't take accountability. You have no sense of like time. You have no discipline. Entrepreneurship might not be for you. First of all, y'all, there's nothing wrong with working a 9 to 5. We have got to stop making people feel guilty for having a 9 to 5. It is okay. Pay your bills. Not like entrepreneurship. This is a dog world that everybody does not need and want to be a part of. But you are going to be working 10 times harder than when you were at your 9 to 5. You are going to have to foot the bill for everything that you want to do, which people don't talk about that too. It is expensive, time-wise and finance-wise, sacrifice-wise, discipline-wise, to start your own business. So if your motives are not right, and if you're starting your own business simply because you want to make money and you saw somebody else doing it, it might not be the time for you to do that, because there is a lot of things that you don't see that other people are implementing. When Patty talks about getting in the room and being around other people that inspired her and allowed her to understand that $100 million, if it's available to other people, then that means it's available to me. However, like the girl probably, and I haven't known you very long, but I know you work like a dog in the most respectful sense, Patty. Like there is no, like you can't want to start a business and you still want to kick it. It doesn't work like that. You can't want to start a business and still want to have a social life. It doesn't work like that. Like it just really truly doesn't. There is sacrifice involved, and you gotta be ready to go for it. Like that's the only way it's gonna work out. Otherwise, you're gonna go groveling back to where you came from, and possibly some bridges that you burned if you didn't do it correctly. So
if it was easy, everybody would do it. I mean, period.
You're talking about that initial, why do you really want to do this? There are a lot of, I think, social pressures. I was just thinking about lyrics like, everybody want to be a boss until it's time to pay the bill, until the invoices come, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't make sense that everybody wants to be a boss. It doesn't make sense that you establish a company and label yourself a CEO just for that feeling, right? Those are the dopamine hits that don't produce anything for us in the long run. They're little things that we do that give our ego a stroke, but they don't actually have meaning. Sometimes I have to remind myself that what is going to matter when I'm 70 years old. Like my mom's 75 years old. At the end of the day, I sit on the couch with her. And you know what? She recently lost her husband, my dad, 3 years ago. And she sits there and she's alone. And there's only so much Wheel of Fortune and fucking, what's that other one with Steve Harvey that I can watch, right?
Family Feud.
There's only so much of that I can sit through in conversations about, CNN, So I'm saying there are some perspective on really what matters. And I think that what you ladies touched on is, and then what LaToya said about Kalani's challenge, encouraging people to focus on their why. Figuring out who you are and just being really, really comfortable with that is a very, very beautiful thing. When I was 14 years old, I started working at a flea market. When I was selling couches to people in Spanish, and I didn't speak Spanish. By the time I was 17 years old, I was working full-time. I was at school full-time and I was at work full-time in the evening working as a telemarketer. I had a mission. There were things that I needed to get done. It was survival based. And then after that, I was going door to door selling alarm systems. And I was figuring out, we were all over the state of California going door to door selling alarm systems. And I've always had this drive. And initially it stemmed from the idea of survival, needing to figure out how to survive. And then I've shared this with you guys before. It's on my Twitter too. Is that once you figure out survival, the only thing left to desire is peace. Peace. Mm-hmm. So if you start with that and you realize, hey, some of us have gone down this path. The idea here is, I want to start a business. Why? Not just find out your why. It's my kids. I want to retire my mom. Not those broad strokes that you hear otherwise. Sit down in silence for 5 to 7 minutes and ask yourself why. What is it that you want to do? Is this something that you're going to feel fulfilled with every single day? Does it invigorate you? Does it make you feel alive? I was telling someone else today on the phone that I don't ever lack hunger. I'm always hungry. This is how I'm wired. I'm wired for this. I'm fulfilling what I'm good at because this is what I do. People ask me what I'm good at. I'm good at making money. That's what I do. I'm good at creating opportunities. So the why and understanding what motivates you, that could be that you like making fucking flowers out of paper, do what you feel really passionate about. Otherwise it's not sustainable over the long run. You won't see those results.
Wow. That's really good. I'm almost taken back because there was a moment where, I realized like I'm not meant to work for anybody else. Like that just doesn't it's not going to exist in my world. I don't think, I'm just not meant to work for somebody else. And, I think back about, even my childhood, how I grew up as well. And I always had an issue like with authority, especially as I became a teenager. I always felt like everyone was stupid all the time. I'm like, do people not get this? And I really, when I was listening to you say that, Patty, I had to think about, why I do what I do. And I've been very outward and open with my why I think I exist and what my job is here on this earth, what my God-given responsibility is. And I don't think it comes in the confines of, a W-2 job working for someone, because it doesn't allow me the runway to utilize all my skills and maximize my creativity. And so I think that this is a really important conversation, because I think we're in a time where is a W-2 cutting it for a lot of people, and people are having to figure out how to make additional income. So people who maybe never aspired to be entrepreneurs, so to speak, they're just hustling, right? So if I have to think about someone who's just hustling and I had to give them some advice on how to make the most out of this hustle time, right? How to make the most out of this time, it is to cut down on all of the things that I wasted time and money trying to figure out. And to me, that's getting to the marketing of this all, right? So what Nasima was saying is that if you don't, is this a viable like concept or idea or whatever, there's a couple of things that I go through in my mind when I'm talking to a new Wire member about their vision and their goals is, what do you do? Or what are you looking to do? Who is it for? And where are those people at? Like, how do you get in front of those people first? That is always kind of my go-to train of thought as I'm getting through this. So I guess where this is taking me in my thought process is, and I'm going to pose it in the sense of a question, is how important, back us up a little bit. If we've established that, okay, this person wants to take a risk, whether this is a side hustle, an independent contractor relationship, or a full-on business, right? Because not everybody's businesses in their mind are going to be the next Amazon or the next big thing, right? Some people's businesses are passion projects. They're owning a coffee shop or something that feeds their soul. It's making art. It's making whatever, right? So if we are talking to folks that have already decided, okay, now I'm going to be in business in some kind of capacity, what is their next step, right? So we made the decision. To me, that next no-brainer step is brand. Absolutely brand. Am I missing the mark on that?
Well, I don't know. I don't know about brand. I ask myself that all the time, because I think that some people say brands have to be really specific, right? So like, for example, what's a good example of a brand, Jade? Like if you hear do 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 do.
I'm loving it.
I'm loving it. McDonald's.
Yeah. Exactly. That's a brand, that, I can't think of another example right off the top of my head right now, but I think whatever's associated with a brand is a feeling. And I think there's a difference between a brand and marketing. So I don't really know how to answer that, because, but I will say I joined a BNI group when I was younger, and I learned to say something like to create that brand idea, which was sustainable financing for successful home ownership. That was my brand. It was I'm your mortgage girl. I provide sustainable financing for successful home ownership. I'm your mortgage girl. So tagline, brand, I don't know what that is, but that's kind of what I build it on. So I don't have a better answer for you than that.
I saw Gary Vee posted the other day, and I thought it was really interesting. He said, if you are focusing on selling, it's because you don't have a sustainable brand. In other words, you have so many people out here trying to convince people and to sell people on something. We are not in the era of selling anymore. We are in the era of branding. And what you did, Patty, when you said, I am your more, right? You are very consistent in building a brand, and you stuck to what that is, right? Sometimes we can be spread so thin, which goes back to because we don't understand our mission or our vision. And so we're trying to save the world. We're trying to get all the coins and all the dollars. And also when it comes to branding, what people don't talk about a lot of times is it takes time to grow a brand. Everybody wants to go viral and they want this brand that popped overnight. Well, let me tell you about the brands that pop overnight. It's overnight. And there are very few that sustain for years to come. So you have to think of everything with this. Here we go with a cliche statement that branding is a marathon. It is not a sprint. So it is a slow rolling process. You do have to trust the process. You do have to trust that, you know what, maybe in the first 6 months, year, maybe even 2 years, nobody knows your brand. But if you just stay consistent, what we do oftentimes is when our brand doesn't hit in the first few months, we think, maybe this shouldn't be my brand. Maybe I need something catchier, right? Everybody can't be the slutty vegans of the world. She has an amazing story. Her brand popped really, really quickly. Well, again, she also had an amazing structure and system set in place where she could scale her business, right? But everybody does not have that. So are you willing to, there was probably once upon a time where we didn't know that I'm loving it, right? Nobody knew who McDonald's was, but they kept putting it in your ear. I'm going to use an example. When I was on radio, there is an attorney and a dentist, but I'll use the attorney, for example. Nothing is sexy about an attorney buying commercial ads. Let's just keep it real. It's really not. But when I tell you, not only did she put money behind the marketing, every time we had a commercial break, well, which in radio we call it a stop set, but every time we had a commercial break, she paid to make sure her commercial was the first one you heard after that last song. So every time that last song went off and we went into a commercial, you would hear her voice. Mm-hmm. She didn't get on there and do mundane commercials. She did commercials with the talent that was on the air. So it sounded really fun and conversational. So she took something as boring as being an attorney and she made it sound fun. She's a car wreck attorney. There's nothing sexy about that. I'm so sorry. But because we're laughing and joking and making it sound fun, it created a relatability. So people started to, that's all they knew, right? That's what you have to do over and over and over again. We get bored with the messaging. You can't get bored with the messaging. You can't get bored with the vision. You can't get bored with the growth in the process. You have to literally drill it in their head. When people are sitting up at night, they're thinking, da, 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 da. That. It's nonstop. That's how you grow a brand, is being consistent and do not give up on it when even you feel like it's not working. That's my 2 cents on branding.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that's really powerful. I think that's super important. Good feedback. And as a reminder, you're not going to get that on day one. The branding is built, and businesses like ours, real estate and lending, branding is built through that relationship, one transaction at a time. Yep. So I always say things like, I'm Patty Goodspeed. I like things done yesterday. I answer my phone. People like things being done quickly. So I follow through with that. So I guess that my brand is also my reputation, right? So you have a lot of people that remember that feeling that they're remembering. So I'm not on the radio. I'm not creating these fun dialogues, but in the transaction I am. And then, so today I took a phone call for someone that put an offer in at 1.1 million or something, right? No, 1,000,050. And the listing agent, I called her. She said, "Hey, Patty, I know who you are." That was wonderful. That was not me having to call and introduce myself and say, "I'm Patty Goodspeed. I've been a mortgage banker for 21 years. I'd like you to know that my buyer is well qualified." She said, "I know who you are." That's branding, right? That's how she knows who I am. Then she also told me what the highest bid was, because then I can relay that information and give our buyer a shot. That's the relationship. So you're right, drilling it over and over again. And then businesses like ours, it's very transactional. Like for someone like Latoya, who's a brand new agent or reestablishing her business in maybe a new market, the idea here is that your reputation amongst other realtors is extremely important to follow through. They want to make sure. So if you don't answer the phone, or you're the type of listing agent that's always late with your disclosures, or your open house starts 5 minutes late, or you missed one or you canceled one, your reputation can go out the door very, very quickly, which affects your brand. So things to remember, I think that with my personal experience, that was built and enhanced without the media, but through relationships and through transactions. And that had a compounding effect over a long period of time to where my reputation became a part of my brand.
Yeah, and it's the consistency. You consistently showed up every single time. You consistently followed up. You were consistently kind. It was that thing. And to your point of growing a brand as well, if you take care of your clients, because no one ever forgets how you made them feel.
Yeah.
You could only be one place at a time, Patty. But if you did 5 transactions in a day, those 5 people are almost like your street team. They're your promotion staff. They're going out. And there, when people are asking, hey, do you know who I can? As a matter of fact, I do, because I just worked with Patty Goodspeed. So you're one person, there are 5 people. So always remember, no matter what, you want to make sure that you are taking care of your clients as if they were your family, because they're going to spread the word from you. They're going to always get you more business you can ever get yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That
There's
money.
there's this really good TikTok. I'll try to find it because I can't remember exactly what she articulated, but she basically explained the differences between marketing and branding, right? Those are 2 very different like skills. If you were to hire or outsource a marketing team, that is not the same as a branding team, someone to help you with the vision of your branding. Because just knowing you, Patty, I feel like your brand is a very sophisticated, white glove service brand that's accessible to everyone, right? Which is what differentiates you, which is why I think people need to be able to articulate what their brand is, because I don't have to guess what Nike, when I go put on these Lululemon leggings, I don't got to know much about them. I just know they're about to last forever. That's what I do know about these here Lulus that I'm about to put on, right? That brand, that reputation does precede you. And there is a supporting stat. So according to LearnHub and RenderForest, consistent brand presentation can increase revenue up to 23%, and 77% of B2C consumers are likely to make purchases based on a brand name that they recognize. Additionally, 82% of investors prefer companies with a strong brand identity. So yeah, brand is really, really big. Okay, good. Now I know we've only got about 10 minutes left. And so the last part that I want to kind of introduce to this conversation is the idea of resilience. Business ownership, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. And if it were easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah.
I am just now 3.5 years into Wire, and I feel like we're really cooking with gas for the first time. Now we've been productive. We've been moving. We've been working. We've been branding. We've been doing all of the things, right? But I haven't felt like we've been cooking with gas. So right, it's taken me 3.5 years to really, really, really figure it out. So in the vein of statistics, approximately 20% of new businesses fail within their first year, and about 50% fail by their 5th year.
Mm-hmm.
High failure rates underscore the importance of resilience and careful planning and long-term success. That was provided by Failery. So what mental battles are we fighting on a daily basis to keep ourselves in the game? That's what I want to talk about.
Well, I cried in the car today. I can tell you that. I did.
Did you?
I did, y'all. I mean, and the reason why I say this is because every day is not good when it comes to entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
Things don't always go as planned. And so sometimes you do have to take those moments. And I almost broke my steering wheel off. That's how, I just had to give myself that moment. So the private battles are realizing that, look, sometimes things don't shake the way that you plan. Sometimes people are not as cooperative. Sometimes people that you're working with don't have the same drive and ambition that you do. And it's the most disappointing thing in life when you find out that people don't have the same work ethic and that they'd be willing to let something fail knowing that you're attached to it, right? So you got to give yourself that moment. You got to cry in the car sometimes. Sometimes you got to shake the steering wheel. Sometimes you got to kick, scream, whatever. And then guess what you got to do? Put your big girl panties on and move on and figure out what are we going to do next. So,
yeah,
I think everybody on here can relate to that.
Mm-hmm. And there's seasons for everything. Like I said, I probably have like 2 toes in entrepreneurship, but most of my revenue comes from my nursing jobs. But, everybody tells me like how much potential there is if I like went all in on like entrepreneurship, and I know there is. However, at the end of the day, I have $3,400 in childcare costs, which is more than my mortgage, by the way. So, like I have to do what's best for my family at the time.
Mhm.
So there's grind season, there's seasons I just took 10 months off to be a mom, and I think that we need to recognize that there's space for all of that, and not beat ourselves up for where we're at, but it's
Yeah.
all part of a journey. And so you just have to identify what's going to be best for you in that period of time, and learn from the ups and downs and the failures and the lessons. And I think I just think like you have to understand that you are going to have hard times, and it's okay. That's it.
Mhm. Yeah, not every day is going to be okay.
Yeah.
When people asked me how I would describe myself for the longest time until the beginning of this, where I wanted to set, where I told you guys I want to be remembered as an alchemist. It started with I want to be remembered as how resilient I've been my entire life.
Yeah.
I have never, I don't know, resilient is a word that resonates with the deepest part of my soul. And here's why. I grew up in a very abusive household. I had to overcome an abusive marriage. I've been continued to be tormented since my divorce in 2013. I've raised 2 children by myself. I've dropped out of high school. I went to 5 different high schools. I went to 2 different junior highs, 5 different high schools, 3 different elementary schools. And the list goes on. My marriage ended in a divorce. I was cheated on, and there were so many different things came from that. I always say I'm every statistic that you could ever think of. And it's just that simple. And I think to myself, if I could have I always had these moments where if I just would have had a degree, I could have been a doctor. I could have been a computer scientist. I could have been a million different things, and I still would have exceeded all expectations for success because, again, I'm wired that way. But resilience is something that when it comes to entrepreneurship, or even the idea that Nasima said, I'm going to have to put this idea on hold because this stability means more to my household right now than the idea, the trade-off. Those are opportunity costs. It takes resilience to make those kind of decisions. As a single mother, as this, that, when you have all the time in the world, when you're younger and you don't have children and you don't have a spouse and you're not answering to anyone else, you are without excuse. And I honestly have zero empathy for any excuse that you might come up with, because I've carried the weight of everything, including financially carrying my parents on my back, right? So what I'm saying is resilience is a conversation that you have with yourself in the morning when you want to pull the covers over your head and say, fuck it, not today. And you get up anyway. Resilience is this idea that I literally just lost the biggest deal I've been working on for the past 6 months, but fuck it. I'm going to get up and I'm going to call 16 more prospects before I leave here today. Resilience is this ability to get punched in the face and get right back up. If you're listening to this, I highly encourage you to look up Tony Robbins and what he teaches about getting into a peak state. Depression is a very real thing, but depression is tied to your sociology. There is a lot of medical science out there that will tell you that that 90% of symptoms associated with any sort of down feeling mentally is cured through movement, right? So physiology can change your psychology. You can get up and move. And getting into a peak state, I don't know if you guys remember when Oprah walked on fire and did all these things. I did that. I did the experience where I physically walked on fire at a Tony Robbins event called Unleash the Power Within. And I did it before I was 20 years old. I think I was like 19 or something. It changed the way my entire mentality works, especially when it comes to resilience. When you walk on burning coals and you do not burn, you get a real life understanding of exactly what you can do to your mental state to overcome anything, right? To really transform the energy and the way that you've defined any moment in your life so that you can go forward with your plan. That's resilience. So I would say learn how to get into a peak state. And I want to do it, but I'm kind of embarrassed because I'll look really ugly. But I want to show you guys, like, I'm in a bad mood. I'm getting up in the mirror and I'm like feeling down and I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe a cold shower, but I look in the mirror and I just might, it's like you make a move. You go, whatever. It's so drastic. that you look like a fool, you feel like stupid, but I'm like, whoa! And I just took right? I just took myself into a peak state. Right in this moment, my energy shifted one level higher. If some of you didn't even know that was possible, right?
Not for real.
No, it's Juneteenth. I was just thinking about crazy stuff white people be doing. But
I love it.
Resilience is a mindset. It is alchemy. It is your ability to shift states. You're a shapeshifter. You can do it. Okay, that's all.
that's all. That is so good. That's so
good.
good. I really love that. I feel like that is a perfect way to wrap up the show. I'm so inspired by you all every single day. And I'm gonna be with them. I'm gonna have children.
We can't hear you,
We
Kaylani.
can't hear you. I think the music.
Y'all can't hear me.
Yeah, we
What
can hear
about
you
now?
now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was also backing away from my mic. Let me calm down. I think I'm one of those people that Patty was yelling at with, not having any kids or, I'm not married. I don't have any responsibilities. I have no excuse. She's right. And I tell myself that on a daily basis where I'm like, you know what? If ever the world was my oyster, it's right now. It's literally right now. And in one of the conversations I've been having with people recently is that I've talked to new people in business and friends and family that have these ideas. And I always hear them saying like, okay, well, I just need XYZ relationship, or I need this person and I'm looking for this relationship and I need these vendors and I need these sponsors and I need XY, all these other external factors. And I think what I would say is control the controllables. All that sounds great. Would those relationships make things easier? Possibly. Are they going to be as fruitful as you think they are? No. The only way you're going to make the progress that you are looking to make is to get in the freaking trenches. Get in the trenches, learn to like it there. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah, we're all equipped. We have everything that we need. But I think we all need to do a Patty scream. Y'all ready? 1, 2, 3. I love it. Yes, it did.
Get into a peak state. When you're down, get into a peak state. Move your body. Take action. It all changes. It's just a moment. Get over it.
All right, ladies. Well, we are signing off in peak state. We are here, same place, same time tomorrow. Oh, before we go, I got to shout out Briscoe, who was in the chat. He is the owner of Zeal Radio. Shout out to Zeal Radio for catching us on the restreams. Big supporters of That's What She Said. So check out Zeal Radio whenever you guys get a moment. And I'd be open to a sponsor of an episode or two. So if you're listening in and you'd like to sponsor an episode of That's What She Said, hit our inbox. Otherwise, we'll be back same place, same time tomorrow. And if there's a topic that you would like for us to discuss, let us know. Hit us on the inbox as well. But wrapping up today, business plans, important if you need funding. Otherwise, a one-pager, actionable items. Again, action plan instead of business plan. Number 2, big on why, big on brand. And number 4, that's 2 and 3. Number 4, do not quit. This has been another wonderful Wednesday on That's What She Said. Thank you all. We will see you all very, very soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.